Hi again, guys. Time for another video in this series I'm doing on movies that I think are fantastic and criminally underrated. Next up is one that is kind of funny because I've just recently started following Chris Stuckman's movie review channel, and I agree with him on like 95% of films, but this is one that I I don't remember what movie. I think it was Hook, actually. It was his Hook review, and he mentioned, this is nowhere near Steven Spielberg's worst film. His worst film is Always. I strenuously disagree with that. I think this movie is excellent. To be perfectly honest, I will fess up that I have a personal connection with this movie in the sense that me and my wife are 12 years apart. So I'm 12 years older, so it's kind of ever present on my mind, and also because I'm about to be 40, kind of going through that midlife thing just a little bit. Not in a depressing way, but it started to like dawn on me that I'm kind of at this halfway point, right, or close to it. Hopefully, I'm just at a halfway point, but it's kind of always on my mind of like making sure she's okay and making sure she'll be okay if presumably I go first. So this movie really kind of is, in a sense, it's kind of become our de facto movie because it's something that we can both kind of relate to, that fear of that losing someone and how you have to move on and find love again. And I don't know. I don't understand. Also, full disclosure, I have not seen the film that Always is based on, which now I've seen clips of it. And it does seem like pretty much a beat for beat remake, as far as like a lot of the dialogue is the same. So I'm not gonna judge this movie based on how close or how much it rips off another movie. I think it's best. I'm probably uniquely qualified to judge this movie because I haven't seen that. Because I'm just basing it on what it is, and I love the theme song being "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes." I think that works perfectly. I like both versions of it, both the J.D. Souther version and, of course, the famous Platters version. I completely buy the romance between Richard Dreyfuss and Holly Hunter. I think that's excellent. Especially my all-time favorite scene, though, and it's probably my favorite Richard Dreyfuss moment of all time, to be blunt, is when Holly Hunter is dancing with her new love interest, and Richard Dreyfuss is getting really depressed that she's moving on, and this tape deck is playing a Van Morrison song, and he's just waiting for the song to be over because he knows the next song on that tape is their song. And just like the opening strains of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes coming on, and him looking up out of this deep depression, looking up at her, hoping that she will, with like tears in his eyes, hoping that she will reconnect that memory of that song with him and stop dancing with this guy. And it's heartbreaking because she needs to move on, but he can't let her. And I don't know. I don't understand why this movie was not well received. I can only really think of two things that would have prevented that. Number one, with a cast like Holly Hunter and Richard Dreyfuss and John Goodman, it's not a movie that you would expect. It's not a feel-good movie. There are some feel-good moments in it, but there's no denying that it is fairly depressing. Even the ending, which is supposed to be kind of uplifting, it's still got this really deep melancholy to it. As far as weaknesses of the film, there's really only two for me. One is the ending does feel a bit rushed. Like, okay, well, now we have this kind of pat ending, and he has let her go and is happy for her that she's happy, and he just says, there's my girl, or that's my girl, and that's my boy, and he just kind of starts walking away, and the film goes to black. Like, there's no payoff for that outside of he's let go. Like, I would have liked to have seen him, I don't know, I'm not really sure how they would have incorporated that into the very end of the movie. But I would have loved to seen him like go to heaven or one more meeting with Hap at the end, played by the late Audrey Hepburn. I think it was her last role actually. And just to have that one little, extra cap to it that, you've done the right thing, now she can move on, and now we're moving on with your journey, and I mean, just to have that would have been nice. But, and the second thing is, and I think a lot of people do bring this up, is that her love interest, this is indicative of what my point's about to be. I can't even picture his name right now in my head. It's like it's right there, but I can't remember it. And I've seen the movie I don't know how many times. He's just not memorable, and he's not given much to do. Ted is his name. He's not given much to do. He doesn't have much of a personality. When you see him interact with another woman in the movie earlier, he's just this complete doofus and has no social skills at all. Now, I understand why they did that, because they're trying to establish that, okay, he can't talk to women, but he can talk to Holly Hunter, the Dorinda character, because that's his soulmate, right? So he's a completely different person around her than he is with all these other people. I get that. But he's just not that charismatic of an actor, and he's just not all that convincing as somebody, especially after Richard Dreyfuss, who is extremely charismatic and funny and charming, and you could completely see why, even though he's taking all of these risks, putting out these fires, you could see why Holly Hunter's character would fall for him, because he's so charming. Well, this new guy, Ted, he's just not. He's just kind of this empty vessel for this guy she's supposed to move on with. And I never really got the sense that he had much to offer as far as charisma, or why is she drawn to him outside of needing to be drawn to someone. So I do think that that is a weak element, but everybody else, I mean, I never cease to get completely caught up in this movie when I watch it from beginning to end. Like the first, I'd say, half hour of it are so involving, because every time I watch it, it's crazy. Like, how it's gonna go, and every time I watch it, I'm rooting for Richard Dreyfuss's character to pull through this situation where his friend Al, basically his plane is damaged, his engine's on fire, and he goes down to save him. And there's so many little moments, little heartbreaking moments like that in this movie. To finish on that scene is, he dives down and he's trying to save his friend, and that's what ultimately leads to him dying. And that's so heartbreaking, because he had just had this discussion the night before with Dorinda about, I could understand you taking all these risks if you were taking these risks to save a life, anybody's life. So that's what he does, and he ends up dead. So that's really heartbreaking, because you imagine, God, she's got to remember that comment and blame herself to some extent. There's this little laugh that Richard Dreyfuss does after he goes down, tries to save Al, he extinguishes Al's plane that was on fire, and he comes back up out of the flames, and his engine's now on fire. And he looks over at Al, and he just kind of, like that. And it's right then that his plane blows up. And it's so, that's just so heartbreaking. It's he's still, kind of this quirky, character that's just almost making light of the situation, and then something awful happens. And there's this amazing shot where right after his plane explodes, they go back to the John Goodman character, who takes his goggles off, or his, I don't know if I guess it's his glasses or his goggles, takes them off, and his inside of his window in his plane is kind of there's condensation on it, and he puts his hand up, so you see his hand on the and he just he's just looking, and it's this slow motion shot where he's just speechless at just he just can't accept what he just saw, and sees this wreckage raining down, and it's all in slow motion, and it's just heartbreaking. That's Spielberg 100%, and I just don't understand why this movie is always on just the bottom rung of movies that Spielberg's done, because I'm not saying that it's his best film at all, but I don't think it deserves to be as kind of cast out as it seems to be in his catalog. I mean, there's plenty of other movies that I think are worse. To be perfectly honest, I didn't even like Sugarland Express as much as this movie, even though it's always, very elevated in like film snob circles. I thought that was a very strange movie tonally. But anyway, it'll just have to be one that I think is great, and that's it. But yeah, there's so many other little heartbreaking moments. I was gonna say, when Dorinda has this premonition that he's gonna die, and she goes to his plane on a bike and kisses him and says, just shut up and fly, or kiss me and fly. And he kisses her, and like as she's walking away, he's trying to yell at her, "I love you," and she can't hear him. And it has such echoes with Ghost, like the movie where he can't say the words "I love you," and he tells her and he doesn't hear it, and he spends the whole rest of the movie trying to prove it, or learning really what that means. And it's just, I don't know, I think the movie's fantastic. I think it's extremely underrated, and again, I feel like with this combined with like Empire of the Sun, which is, I would argue, a little overrated now, but underrated at the time. I think like the movies like this and that one really kind of broke Spielberg's heart, and I don't think he really makes movies like this anymore. So I would highly recommend it. I'm also into poster collecting. I have the one sheet for this movie. I also have the lobby card set. Bought this the minute it was available on a standalone Blu-ray. So it's not really a light movie, but extremely well acted. And I even love the score by John Williams, even though it's not considered one of his better scores either. I think it's appropriately understated, and again, very melancholy, and just kind of does a great job of underscoring all the emotion. And I don't know, I think it's a great movie. So leave your thoughts, comments, whatever. Like this video if you like it, subscribe. Appreciate your time, and I'll be back next time. Thanks.